Testing. 1, 2, check. Good morning. Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Mark Wheeler, who is one of the chaplains over at the jail. I appreciate you being here today. And after the prayer, please remain standing for the pledges.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And let us pray. Father, first of all, we want to thank you for who you are, a righteous, loving, prayer-answering God who truly cares about the welfare and desires of his people. And Lord, today we come to you, this court comes to you with a desire of the heart, and that's for you to be present with us during these proceedings. Lord, I ask that you impart supernatural wisdom on Judge Whitley and all the commissioners as they go about the business of governing this county. Lord, let your Holy Spirit be the prevailing wind in all the decisions and all the plans made here today. And Father, finally, I speak a blessing over each and every person here today, Lord, and I declare abundance and never lack for each and every one of them in all phases of their life. Watch over them, protect them today as they come and go. We thank you for these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Chaplain, thank you for being here today. I'm sure that there are probably those who just wish to just give a little bit of wisdom to me every once in a while. So I appreciate that supernatural wisdom. Thanks.
Judge Whitley.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask that the court, this assemblage, and everyone in Tarrant County keep in their prayers Dr. Keith Brantley, a former JPS resident on a humanitarian assignment in Liberia, who is currently battling Ebola infection. He and his family are products of this community, and we need to uphold them in prayer and pray for healing and peace in their lives.
Certainly we can do that. I know we've all been kind of watching the TV the last couple of days, really since the weekend, and I know that he and his family are certainly in our prayers, so we'll certainly do that. Mr. Manius, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have one announcement relating to the agenda, and that deals with the the tax assessor collector. It would be item 9M1, the office deputations. We're going to ask that that particular item be held for 1 week. Also, Your Honor, members of the Court, we do have 2 audience participation forms that are up on the dais for you all this morning. And then finally, I'd like to make an announcement. We've gone through the interview process and the selection process now for our Chief Information Officer, and I would like to announce to the Court that Chris Avafor has been appointed as the new CIO for Tarrant County.
Congratulations. Well, I was going to say, I couldn't see you. You're usually up here, so I figured, well, we appoint him and he's missing in action. So, Chris, congratulations. Look forward to working with you on this, continuing to work with you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of July the 22nd.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Proclamations and resolutions. We have an appreciation for Gay Troutman, and that's for ratification only, so I'll move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have a proclamation.
Yes, Your Honor. It's World Breastfeeding Month. Would you please read the proclamation into the record?
You bet. Whereas the World Alliance for Breastfeeding Action, formed on February the 14th, 1991, is a global network of organizations and individuals who believe breastfeeding is the right of all children and mothers, and who dedicate themselves to protect, promote, and support this right. And whereas a mother's milk is one of the most easily utilized and cost-effective prevention strategies available for many chronic and acute diseases, including various infections, sudden infant death syndrome, diabetes, obesity, cancer, among others, and whereas 75% of women in Texas initiate breastfeeding, but only 11% are exclusively breastfeeding at 6 months. And whereas based on numerous health advantages of breastfeeding, a cost analysis concludes that if 90% of the U.S. families would breastfeed exclusively for 6 months, the U.S. would save a minimum of $13 billion and prevent over 911 deaths annually. Whereas to mark the 2014 World Breastfeeding Month theme of the World Alliance for Breastfeeding Action, Breastfeeding a Winning Goal for Life, the Tarrant County Breastfeeding Coalition will host the 3rd Annual Family Expo in Latchon, Texas, a synchronized event in support of moms and breastfeeding babies in multiple statewide sponsored locations, which will include Tarrant County on August the 2nd, 2014. And whereas Tarrant County and the state of Texas are committed to increase public support and acceptance of breastfeeding as infant feeding norm, remove barriers, and encourage all citizens to support our breastfeeding moms, now therefore be it further resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim August 1st through 31st, 2014 to be World Breastfeeding Month across Tarrant County. In witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 29th day of July, 2014.
Your Honor, in recognition of World Breastfeeding Month and of the fact that Tarrant County is a leader in the workplace lactation movement, I move approval of this proclamation.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
We have with us this morning Shannon Wingo of our Public Health Department and perhaps others to receive this proclamation. Would you join me at the podium, please?
I'd like to thank the court for acknowledging that breastfeeding in health benefits for our community. I have with me some guests and I have Jackie and Jackson McCullum, and Jackson has been breastfed for a good while, and she's been on this train with me for quite a while. We have a Tarrant County Breastfeeding Coalition, huge activists in the community and helping us get things going. She's done a ton of work for our Latch-On event that we held this Saturday at the Fort Botanic Gardens, the Latch-On, Texas. We are being recognized across the state as an up-and-coming coalition, and we're just very new, about 3 years old. So we highly thank you for acknowledging us. I also have with me Lane Walker. She's a registered dietitian and lactation consultant, and she works for Tarrant County Public Health WIC. And we've done a lot of work within the WIC program to increase our breastfeeding rates. In the last 6 years, our initiation rates for the WIC population in Tarrant County have gone from 60% to almost 80.2%. So we're well on our way to meet the Healthy People 2020 goals of over 75% initiation breastfeeding. So I want to thank the court for acknowledging World Breastfeeding Month. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks.
Commissioner Wynn, I believe you have a resolution.
Yes, sir. This is only also for ratification of it, the resolution of accommodation for the Union of North American Vietnamese Student Association, who held their 11th annual leadership conference in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I move for its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Board members, you have before you the consent agenda.
I would move approval of the consent agenda minus the one item that GK asked us to remove.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, less the item that was discussed earlier. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Public hearings, transportation services. Good morning.
Good morning. How are y'all doing today?
Good.
The intersection of Gebron Drive and Ferris Way is located in Pyramid Acres subdivision in Precinct 1. Currently has no permanent traffic control at that location. We're asking for your permission to install stop signs to stop Gebron Drive at that intersection.
This is a public hearing, and I'll open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak to this matter. There appearing to be none, then I will close the public hearing and ask for any action that you might want to take.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Mendez is going to present the first item.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What we have before you this morning is what we typically do prior to a legislative session. We have sent out a notice to all county departments asking for any issues they feel they're going to need help with through our legislative process. We received some feedback on that, but we still have some more research to do on a lot of the specific issues. What we have before you today is a package of legislative policy statements that are on issues that typically reoccur, and we look to these for our direction during the session on issues of large impact and general impact to the county. What we have before you today are policy statements dealing with support of criminal justice initiatives, support for permissive commissioners court authority, opposition to lowering the current tax appraisal cap, support for improvements to the mental health system, opposition to unfunded or underfunded mandates, and support for transportation improvements and funding. We have worded these generally in order to give us the broadest possible direction. Obviously, as specific legislative pieces of legislation come forward during the session, we will bring those back for specific action and your consideration at that time. What we also have before you that was brought from our partner agencies in the county, we also have a resolution of support of the Ntta legislative goals for the 84th session, in addition to the any legislation or legislative action required to create a contiguous county advisory committee. Kerry Rogers from Ntta is here to answer any specific questions on that particular initiative, but in general, their legislative policy statements deal with their continuing efforts to improve the collection of tolls and improvement of customer service issues. I'd be happy to answer any question on any of these individual issues, but we would ask for your approval of the policy statements and the resolution as presented.
So move.
I'll second, but I do have a couple questions
Okay.
on the Ntta legislative action.
May I call Kerry Rogers up
Please.
to address that?
Good morning,
morning.
Judge and
Good morning,
Commissioners.
Good morning, Kerry. On your PowerPoint presentation, page 6,
Yes.
legislative consideration number 2, it talks about create a paperless, electronic-only billing notification option for Zip Cash customers.
Yes, sir. The Zip Cash is our pay-by-mail option for customers who choose not to get a toll tag. And what we wanted to do is provide an option for folks to get their invoices electronically if they wanted to. It was not a requirement. It's if you're getting your invoice, you want to go into your account or contact us about getting those notices via your email, that you would have the option to do that.
Okay, so we are providing them with the option, but they do have an option to receive paper invoices,
Right now, they get paper invoices. That's the automatic, is the paper invoice.
That's not going to change.
That is not going to change, but if you want to get those notices electronically, then this would give you that option.
Okay, thank you. I want for that clarification. What about the Justice of the Peace Judicial Discretion fix? Can you talk in details about that?
Yes, in the 2011 session, the NTTA revised its toll collection and billing process through Senate Bill 469, which was authored by Senator Nelson. There is a provision in there that is specifically applicable to the JPs. They administer the citation, the judicial end, if someone doesn't pay their toll invoices. So that language in there says that the Justice of the Peace shall collect tolls on behalf of NTTA through that process. That shall was actually in the statute before Senate Bill 469, but in working closely with the JPs, they came to us and said, will you please change that to a may? And so we had actually agreed to do that during the 2013 session, but as the processes go, it ended up getting swept, and that bill ended up not passing, but not for lack of support. So we have committed to go back to them and change in 366-178G to change the shall to a may.
Have you communicated that fix to the JPs within Tarrant County?
Yes, sir. We have had some very robust communication with all of our JPs. We have a distribution list that goes to all of them. Some have come back and said, I don't have a toll road in my county, so you don't need to send that stuff to me. But we also do work very closely with the head of the JPCA, Judge Curbo out of Denton County. But also we've worked with Judge Swearingen in the past, Judge Hayes. So yes, there is communication ongoing.
That's great. Thank you for your...
Thank you.
And then the other thing that I'll mention while you were up here is that there's also a statement in here addressing and a resolution with regards to Johnson County and their board representation and how we're going to try to resolve and work through that. Johnson County has approved, I believe, the resolution, and so what we're doing and what I had kind of indicated is that I felt like as a court we would only be willing to pass resolutions to the extent that Johnson County was in favor, and they have done that. And so what we're doing is not anything contrary to what Johnson County would like, but is in step with their agreement on this.
Yes, sir. And NTTA, the NTTA committees and board will be briefed in August to take action to formally form that advisory committee. So we have pending resolutions with our other member counties as well to make sure their support is in place along with Johnson County's before we move forward.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Any questions with regards to any of the other resolutions that Mark is bringing at this time? Mark, you are working with the various other elected officials, clerks, the tax assessor collector.
Yes, sir. We've had numerous conversations on several other issues that are pending. For example, I've been working with Randy at Juvenile on juvenile issues. We'll probably be bringing back resolution on those issues. E-filing, there's ongoing conversations with our counterparts in other large urban counties and CUC trying to figure out where we are standing on that. The air quality funding, the LIRAP funds that are being held back at the state level, we're still trying to formulate a strategy on that statewide. So those things, as they gel statewide, we'll be bringing back policy statements to address those issues as well.
Well, I know that, I know that we have folks at JPS. I know we have folks at the DA's office that go down occasionally. We have folks at probably MHMR. Are we coordinating and bringing those folks together to also see what they may have or what they're doing?
We have reached out to them for their input on legislative issues. To date, we have not, really gotten any feedback because their coalitions have not really gelled on a lot of issues. This is really pretty early in the process. That stuff usually happens later in the summer, but the things that you have before you today are things that we always have on our agenda, so I thought I'd try to get an early jump on it.
I have a suggestion. Under the support for permissive Commissioner's Court authority, the statement there is pretty generic. Is there any way that you can list or cite specific examples in which the Commissioner's Court is responsible for, but we have no authority.
We could go back and revisit that, yes, sir?
Because I don't think a lot of the representatives in Austin really know the specifics of what we are talking about. Maybe we can cite 4 or 5 of the most urgent examples so that we can communicate to them about the inequity a little bit more effectively, I think.
How we've used this in the past is usually as an opportunity to visit with them one-on-one on those specific types of issues, because
Right.
that's generally a good question that comes up and initiates that conversation between myself and their staff and themselves. But I will be happy to add that to the policy statement if you want to hold that one back, and I can.
No, that's fine, but if you can maybe send me, if other court members are interested, that's fine, but send me
Absolutely.
some specific examples, because
sir.
I do have opportunities to sit down with all representatives on these issues as well.
And I would just say, if you're sending anything out, send it out to all of us, so that way we make sure we're all still staying on the same page.
Absolutely.
I would just point out that one thing that comes immediately to mind in that regard would be the orderly administration of growth in the unincorporated areas of the county. That's a perennial issue for urban counties. But in addition, I would like to request that you also work with public health on whatever their legislative program might require.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's make it very tough for us to deal with situation in which a cement recycling plant is building a new plant right next to a neighborhood. Okay. But we cannot do anything about that. So that's a very good example, Commissioner.
Over the years, I've had the challenge of having a slaughterhouse built right next door to a residential neighborhood and having no authority.
Right in the middle of a neighborhood.
No authority to do anything about it.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mark.
Members of the Court, we can go to item number 2 under the Administrator's section. We're requesting that the Court approve a resolution for the interjurisdictional emergency management program with the City of Grapevine.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, members of the Court, on item number 3, we're requesting that the Commissioners' Court approve and concur with actions of the Hospital District Board of Managers as it relates to a commercial sublease agreement between MHMR of Tarrant County and the Hospital District.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Tidwell?
We have 2 items we're asking the court to consider this morning. The first is to receive and file the quarterly investment report for the period ended June 30th, 2014.
Move to receive and file.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And the second item is to receive and file the Tarrant County financial statements for the same period ended June
Move
2014.
approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Renee, would you remind me to talk with you a little bit about the cash management thing? You and team may be interested, and I want to. Ms. Glenn. Oh, wait a minute.
Election.
Elections. Steve. Sorry
Morning.
about that.
We're here to request that the Commissioners Court approve the election judges and alternate judges. This would also include the signature verification committee, the early voting ballot board, and the early voting league clerks and clerks. This appointment will begin August 1st, 2014 and run through July 31st, 2015.
This comports with recommendations from the various political parties.
Yes, sir.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Glenn.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Glenn.
We have 3 items for the court this morning. The first item, we're asking the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
The second and third items involve extension of out-of-class pay situations. The first is in veteran services. As explained in your court communique, we have an employee who assumed the duties of the director earlier this year. The county administrator is requesting an extension for this person to continue to receive out-of-class pay as he wraps up the recruitment process. The estimated cost will be about $5,100 to the general fund, but that cost will be offset by salary savings.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Third and final item, again, is a request for an extension of out-of-class pay, this time for community development. Ms. Ward has an employee who assumed the responsibilities of the assistant director earlier this year following his retirement. There is a question at hand about whether or not there will be sufficient grant funds to actually fill the position on a full-time basis going forward. So with that question on the table, Ms. Ward is requesting an extension of out-of-class pay until a determination has been made about grant funding. If a decision is made to continue, or for grant funds to remain in place, then of course she'll proceed with filling the assistant director's position on a full-time basis. Again, the cost is fairly minimal, less than $1,000, and that cost is covered by salary savings.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Chris. Come on down.
Morning, Your Honor. We have one item for consideration this morning, but before that, I want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Measles, the court, and various elected officials for the support that has been given us the last difficult 10 months while I've been in the interim role as the CIO. Thank you for the confidence and the trust that you have bestowed on my team at IT, and I'm here to say that we are ready to get to work to continue the efforts to transform our IT into a true instrument to drive the accomplishment of the county's strategic goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Make us proud.
Move approval.
Second.
Your item number 1 has been moved and seconded. We appreciate everything you're doing. If there's no further discussion, please vote. It passes unanimously. Chris, welcome aboard. You will hope that all your votes get passed that easily.
Yes, sir.
Don't oversell it, Chris. You've already got approval.
Thank you.
And come on down. And Chris, you know your tie there. You're giving Beecham a run for his money on your ties there. So we're.
Good morning.
Good morning.
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 At Public Health, we have 2 items for your consideration this morning. And the first is interim financing for the Ryan White Part D funding. I have found that that's actually going to be on court next week, but we need to go ahead and seek approval for the interim funding today.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And the second is approval of a contract with Kashan Shaw, and this person is to assist us in surveillance database management for West Nile virus. As you all know, we have many, many more pools being tested than we've ever had before, and so we needed some assistance with for the environmental health area to collect all that data and get it out for our weekly report.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Beecham.
Where does this team pick this year to finish?
Well, I don't think they even worry about picking them anymore.
Unlike the University of Texas and TCU, all the players that participated in our spring training are still under scholarship. But it's early in the week.
As soon as LSU get out on work release, they'll be that way too.
Or they could play for OU. We have 5 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for RFP 2014-099. This is an annual contract for a customer queuing system for our tax office. Recommendation be to award per the current terms of the contract, awarding to a company called Nemo Q.
Nemo, huh?
Move
Nemo.
approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is also a bid award recommendation for RFP 2014-103. This is an RFP for a digital 911 voice recorder system for our Sheriff's Department. Recommendation again be to award per the contract terms, awarding to a company called Commercial Electronics.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our item number 3 is also a bid award recommendation for bid number 2014-132. This is an annual contract for short-term and long-term rental of cars, trucks, and vans. Recommendation would be to award on a per unit price basis, awarding to the primary and secondary vendors as shown in your court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our number 4 item is also a bid award recommendation for bid number 2014-136. This is an annual contract for the rental of bobtail trucks used primarily by elections. Recommendation be to award a CAPS van and rental on a per unit price basis.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our last item is an item in regards to RFQ 2014-123. It's an RFQ for professional services for a delivery system for Reform Incentive Payment Program, the District Public Health Department. We are seeking approval from the court to negotiate with Anderson Associates CPAs.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Commissioner Johnson, I believe you have an interlocal agreement.
Move approval of item 9, 1A, B, C, and D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments today? I would like to appoint Steve Montgomery to fill my vacancy on the JPS board. Steve has served on this board in the past. It's probably been 4 or 5 years.
With distinction.
So, chairman, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, he was chair. He was actually chair when we, I told him, I said, the only thing the court might blame you for is the fact that you hired early, but other than that, you'd had a pretty good run. So I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And he replaces who?
Karen Van Wagner.
Yes.
Passed away.
Yes. That was a big loss.
Yeah, it was. Court members, you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have 2 items to bring to you this morning. The first concerns the compensation survey update. Ann is going to address the Court initially on this.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Ann.
Good morning.
We are here, as GK said, to update you on the status of our compensation system. As usual, Paul Glogowski is here to provide an update with the Hay Group's salary survey information. They're going to also give us the recommendations for structure and merit for FY15. I'll have some handouts for you afterward. And without further ado, Paul, come on forward. And there are extra copies here if anybody needs copies.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. How are y'all today?
Good.
I hope you feel supernatural, Judge. I've never presented to Superman, but maybe today I am. I'm not
No,
sure.
he was asking for supernatural wisdom. And
Oh,
that's
okay.
I just wanted wisdom of any sort.
Thank you so much. I hope this is as brief as you would like it to be, or as extended as you would like it to be. We have a presentation. This is a condensed version of a larger report, if you will, that was delivered to Human Resources. And we're trying to focus on this particular presentation piece on some of the key aspects of what we did and the results and recommendations. This is kind of an intro slide that basically says, here's what we were asked to do. Look at the findings and of a market study for all your work groups. We'll talk about your work groups here in a second, like we normally do. The reason we put law enforcement as kind of a second piece on this intro slide is simply the information that comes out of the analysis comes from a special law enforcement survey we do with cities and counties in the general metropolitan area, about 13 or so. That's the only difference, really, in what we do. The other comes from published surveys that we do in the Hay Group, the other data. An overall big picture page. I can't read my page numbers from here. I hope if you have a printed material, you can read it, but I certainly can't.
6.
We're on page 6 already. Great. So just a general statement. Overall, we make comparisons of Tarrant County pay to, quote, the market in terms of discussions on labels such as P50 or P25. And just to make a reference point, P50 of the data would suggest if Tarrant County is paying at P50, that it's an if Tarrant County pays at P50, it says they pay as half the people in the data population pay better than you, and half the people pay less than you. The 25th percentile would suggest that 75% of the organizations in the database, whatever database you're looking at, pay better than Tarrant County, but you pay better than 25%. So these are just reference points of point of discussion about where you as a county are paying relative to something. And it provides a language of discussion. This is not very different in terms of results that you've seen over the past several years, meaning this is about where you've been paying relative to these reference points, relative to the data that's been collected. There has been a slight improvement in your positioning, but not what I would say material improvement on your position. Wow, those are bad.
This is page 8 now.
Thank you so much, Judge. That's that wisdom, I think. Here what we do is we then kind of peel a layer off the onion from that broad general statement. This is a slide or a piece of paper that's been a summary slide in almost every one of our presentations that we made over the past almost 15 years or more. And it takes each group, provides each work group or policy group, exempt, a management, non-exempt, IT exempt, IT non-exempt, craft, law enforcement, etc., and provides you with some additional insight at a very high level about where those particular groups' pay is aligned with those market reference points. It gives you some further information just as a matter of size of group, how many employees when the data was given to us. So these aren't exact numbers today because I think we collected the data back in March, about how many employees are represented in that particular group or policy group and what their sum of payroll is. One of the reasons we put that information in there is as we make recommendations about we think one given group should see something different in a recommendation versus another given group, we mean to understand that what's the effective impact or cost to that particular recommendation. And it's sometimes the overall cost is impacted by the size of the group itself and the size of the payroll. Again, here about the only thing that's maybe worth of specific note other than the words on a piece of paper, and maybe again as a reminder, you'll see in here when we get to the IT groups in particular that they might be a little bit more farther away from where they were before in the market. We had some of these discussions throughout the course of the project. We met with the IT interim at the time, talked about issues they were having in IT. So we had discussions about where does IT set their policy. His long-time history, so if you go back before I had gray hair with Tarrant County, the county was trying to target the pay of IT professionals at the 50th percentile because of lots of different reasons. You, in essence, have moved away from that over time. You haven't funded IT to that level. and IT is paying more in line with the 25th percentile, but not as close to the 50th.
Question. On this slide,
Yes, sir.
The compensation includes salary and wages, right?
This is just, I would say, base pay.
This is only base pay?
Yes, sir.
So the benefit?
The benefit load or the benefit factor
not
is
included.
not in this particular number. That is correct.
And historically, I mean, at least I guess the last time we actually did an overall survey and looked at that, we were about the 75th percentile with regards to benefits, and when you put the two together, we were close to, I believe, the 50th percentile.
I think you moved closer to the 50th percentile clearly because of some of your bigger items on your overall benefit package, which included retirement and maybe health care, if I can recall. So it clearly is a feature of your overall package, the benefits piece, that enhances the program. If you only look at base pay, you get a different feeling. You get a better feeling when you look at base plus benefits. We did that study last year, and typically we were on a pattern. Economy and lots of things in the short history took you off that pattern of looking at that every so often, and this is one of those years we didn't look at that. The benefit piece, but
Right.
Historically the benefits are well positioned versus the market, and you look a little bit light when you only look at pay only.
You singled out IT personnel. It looks to me like the IT category is approximately the same percentage below P50 as the other categories
Right.
are.
That's correct. But it's, to me, a statement of, look how far it's fallen relative to, it used to be targeted there. None of the other groups ever even used to be targeted there. So it's a matter of just historical reference, Commissioner.
Okay.
And some discussion, by the way, with the folks in IT and Human Resources about, is there anything going on in the marketplace that says, should you get only closer to the 25th percentile, and looking at those numbers, would that severely damage your ability to attract and retain people? And we did look at that. I think administratively there's some things they're going to be able to do versus move the structure at some very large rate. So there's two ways you can affect pay. One is affect the structure and aim higher. That's what, to me, the structure says. What are we willing to pay people? And then what do you actually do? I call that the administrative side.
Well, and again, I think I think it applies even with IT, and maybe it's because the IT functions aren't as quite as, they may still be competitive, but I guess the way I have looked at the whole salary situation is we pay less. We pay in that around that P25, between P25 and P50. But we do that and we enhance the benefits to assure that if someone comes to work with Tarrant County, stays with Tarrant County, that when they retire from Tarrant County, that they will be independent, and we won't end up catching them on the back end and paying for them again as they enter JPS and enter some of the other social services. So I really see this as being a situation where we're helping to assure that when they get to retirement, they'll be in good shape.
I agree totally. As an outsider, as someone who looks at your plan just overall, it is certainly fit for the long-term employee who is wanting to stay in that career, at least career till retirement. And then if I reverse that and look at the way our company pays, it pays totally differently. It kind of pays really nicely now. And
hopes that your employees invest their money and can retire when they get ready to do it.
It's a totally different plan. And I was being envious of your plan as I sat and talked to Robin a little bit about my gray hair. The other
Most
thing
of
on
which
the
I
IT,
think has come while you've been working for us. So
and I'm not going to say you're a cause of that. Commissioner, one other thing about IT, and some numbers on some future pages here if we want to get there and talk about them. When the IT decision was made years ago, prior to you being in place, I think Commissioner Johnson and I were, when I was here, when I first started, you were here, Commissioner.
When he first started, there was no IT.
Maybe. But they were saying, let's target the IT group at 50th percentile.
Yeah, Compact had just come out with that, that desktop thing that you had to lug around.
Are you gigging me or gigging Commissioner
No,
Johnson?
I gig him plenty of times already. This is my only opportunity with you once a year. So
I don't have to take my shoes off at the airport.
Trying to get back on track.
Good luck with
When
that.
the IT group was aiming to pay at the 50th percentile, it also changed administratively where they were allowed to hire people in at in essence, as a percent of midpoint, a lower level. And over time, that's caused maybe a little bit of a problem administratively as they slip from that P50 target and they maintain the administrative rules of you have to hire in at minimum or something like that. That's what has been causing an issue of attracting people from the outside.
Well, I think that we've made adjustments to that policy.
Yes, and that's been recently talked about, right? So, wow, maybe I shouldn't have gone there. This slide is maybe in a different look, a summary of what that other page just said. It focuses on just above or below. And one thing that's going to be a little different in our recommendation this year is while these are general statements about the overall group, right? This is a general statement about exempt or non-exempt relative to these market references. We can look at those at a little finer lens on the grade level in that policy group. So you have 8 to 10 grades in the exempt population. Well, not every grade is the equal distance from the market. So part of our recommendation is to maybe where the data suggests, make some recommendations that a given range within the exempt population grade might be going up more than a different range. So the entry-level grade might go up X percent. The higher grade might go up or down X plus or minus, all due to where is that particular grade in that particular group relative to the market reference points. So the recommendation is to change your structures by grade, by plant, by policy, by grade, that better aligns, not exactly aligns, with the data coming out of the 25th percentile for all groups. That does, if accepted, that does a couple of things. It creates, as it always does, by the way, some potential cost of people who fall below these higher end rates for that given range. The value of the range changes. Someone was hired maybe recently who was at that low end. Now the low end changes. Now there's a cost to bring them back up to the new low. With the law enforcement group, everybody's affected because in essence, once you change the steps, everybody falls below the step. So therefore, part of that cost is to raise people in the law enforcement plan to that, quote, new value step. The second feature, and that would cost in our recommendation about 1.2% to do that for all groups, about $2.4 million with some rounding. Then the second recommendation is to, after you've done that piece or created that fund of dollars for that reason, then an additional approximately 2.3% merit/PFP/step increase for those people in law enforcement that are going to get a new step. And the total cost comes to about 3.5% total. That's of your annualized base payroll. Our figures are going to be a little bit different than what Ange, I think, provides to the court because of some grant-funded positions. But generally looking at about $7 million, 2015 for you, investment based on the recommendations. It's a little bit higher than recent times at the county. There was a lock-in kind of almost over the past multiple years, around 3, to fund the recommendations, or I think where you ended up. So that's just a summary by group.
But your recommendation, this 3.5% or $7 million,
yes, sir,
doesn't just affect the law enforcement class. It's
no, that's
across
everybody. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir. All right. Here's just a visual way. Maybe we could have changed the order. If we take everybody in the county, we take all the market data and scrunch it all together. We take all your midpoints, if we can kind of craft that. Where is Tarrant County paying its employees relative to the market? You're actually, because you're going to have people who are paid above, some people pay below their midpoint, some people topped out, some people lower end. If you average it all out, you're actually paying about the 25th percentile. That doesn't mean every person in this room is paid at the 25th percentile, but in the aggregate, your little regression line, if you will, is lining up almost right on top of the market at P25.
Now, this graph,
Yes, sir.
does it affect does it reflect current conditions or your proposal?
Current.
Current.
Yes, sir. Now, keep in mind the market is going to move. I mean, there are going to be people getting increases, so part of what you're doing is keeping pace with the anticipated. So, in the very least, this picture looks like this next year with maybe a slight improvement. Here's an example. The next set of slides just demonstrates two phenomenons. Every group is a little bit different. We're here, and the first one on the exempt, we're making a recommendation that the higher levels of the exempt, their structure goes up by 3%. The lower end of the exempt population, your lower grades, if you will, in exempt only go up 2%. So this is a reflection of what did the market data say. It said, in fact, your midpoints are trailing the market a little bit at the higher ends, not trailing as much as the lower ends. When we look at the management group, it's an across-the-board 2%. They are all generally, at every grade in the management policy group, relatively same to market, so move them the same as a group. So you'll see the variations in recommendations where something might get more or less than others, and this is structure. It is structure. Its impact on employees, the more the structure moves, the chances are more people fall out below the bottom. Therefore, more people might get tapped to get an increase to get them to that level, or that increase might be a little bit more. And here's just you'll notice the craft. All craft is being recommended at 3.5%, reflective of they were a little bit lower position in the market. Law enforcement, the data was suggesting at the lower ends, made a bunch of changes last year. That lower end doesn't move quite as much. It's the upper end that on a relative basis to market is farther away from the market at the 25th, so we recommend a structure increase at the top of a larger amount than that at the bottom.
I thought that last year in the law enforcement that the lower end did not get as much of an increase.
We did so many things, Judge, that the new versus the old continues to be very difficult to actually make an apples-to-apples comparison, because one of the things we did is we kind of cut off, if you will, or totally changed this concept of what's the starting rate. The starting rate used to be like step E or D. Well, now it's step A. So
that's unique.
Well, wow, what a novel idea, right?
It's supernatural wisdom.
So the data suggests, the data suggests that if you're looking at the data, that bottom end doesn't need to move as much this year. They seem well positioned at a starting rate to starting rate basis versus the market, especially if your target's the 25th percentile, in very good stead still.